because fertility is our life force energy. So even if you are a woman who does not want to or plan to become pregnant now or ever, you still want to be fertile because that's going to be your body at its maximum health and vibrancy and feeling. Welcome to the Women's Bodies Podcast, where we explore women's health through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine and bioenergetics. I am your host, Dr. Suuzi Hazen. I am a mother, a wife, a former goat farmer, a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine, and the owner and founder of Mother's Best Liver Pills, the only non-white label, 100% California-raised, grass-fed, and grass-finished beef liver supplement. Women's bodies. We are not small men, and we are never broken. Today, I am hosting my friend, Holly Leever. Holly is an acupuncturist and herbalist who works in Ojai, California, and she is on the ground with women, helping them get pregnant and have babies. Infertility, or as we like to say, subfertility, has become absolutely rampant in today's culture, and there's so many factors behind it. You know, people love to point at microplastics or xenoestrogens or the birth control pill or X, Y, and Z. And I don't really see it that way, and neither does she. It is multifactorial. And every woman's, let's say every couple's story is different and needs to be addressed individually. We're not humans as much as we would love to. Humans do not just fit in a neat little box. One thing we will get into in this podcast is the male factor in subfertility, because it's 50-50, ladies. It's not just your fault. So often we just address the female factor endlessly without even getting a sperm count here. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into eating disorders and eating disorder recovery. We're going to get into the pathologically type A lifestyle that a lot of women that struggle with subfertility are in recovery from. And a lot more. So thanks for being here and enjoy. Mwah! Today I'm talking with my friend Holly Leever. Holly is an acupuncturist in Ventura, California area. Are you in Ojai or Ventura?
Ojai.
Right? Okay.
Totally.
So you're a women's fertility specialist. You're a Chinese medicine practitioner. You're an acupuncturist. You have an amazing podcast that I am constantly referring women to, because in my business, Mother's Best Liver Pills, I get a lot of women coming for fertility concerns, and sometimes they're emailing me and asking me questions, and I'm like, honestly, you just need to talk to someone who's a real specialist in this area. And so I always direct them to you and your podcast. So you're right there in the trenches helping modern women with all of our challenges get pregnant and heal their womb and their fertility issues.
Yeah. And I am so passionate about fertility, and there are so many things out there that don't feel aligned to my message in particular. I guess I may be still sort of clarifying what that means, but natural fertility, I guess, is the easiest way to define what I'm doing. But I also work with people that are going through IVF cycles or doing IUI and things like that. So it's sort of more like a mentality of the person, of where they're at and what they're sort of willing to do. And sometimes we get to a point where you did all the natural stuff and we still need to draw in some other resources, or maybe there's like a male factor thing that there's just kind of we've done everything and there's nothing more that we can do.
Well, you know, one thing you just brought up that I think is really interesting is the intersection between ART, which we would call assisted reproductive technology. So ART is just, you know, the term you'll hear medically a lot. And then natural fertility. Natural fertility is where we're basically, you're trying to bring out the utmost state of vitality in the person's own body, right? So bringing up your gut health, your vaginal flora, the quality of your womb, the quality of your periods, the quality of your overall energy and health. and also that for the male partner, because this is something that is often on my heart with the incredibly sweet women that come to both
Mhm.
of our doorsteps, in such desire for a child, is that the male factor is 50% of subfertility, right?
Mhm.
And it's just so interesting because since our body kind of carries the baby, we always think of the woman's, if we're not getting pregnant, we always think of it's the girl. It's just
Mhm.
like default. But in half the cases, it's actually the guy because,
Mhm.
it's almost like the woman is the field where the seed is going to grow, and the man's semen is like the fertilizer. And so I guess those are two things that really interest me, is the connection with natural fertility and ART, how they actually can go
Mhm.
hand in hand really well, to be honest, because sometimes we do need a modern solution for a modern problem. But
Mhm.
also then the male factor. So gosh, why don't we start with how we could use natural fertility to like boost success of IVF?
Yeah. Okay. So what I have observed is that a lot of times women will go from, which this was my own personal story. It's like you go to the gynecologist when you're 14 or 15 years old and you're like, oh, I'm like, my period's weird, or like it's painful, or I have acne. And I don't know if it's still like this in the current generation, but I'm 40 for what it's worth for context of like when I was growing up. And everyone was just put on birth control. That's just to regulate your cycle, to eliminate period problems, acne, whatever the thing is, like the answer is birth control. I think from what I've observed, it's still kind of like that, for better or worse. And so that happened. And then women go into, okay, I'm going to go into my doctor and tell them, now I'm in this relationship. I want to have a baby. And maybe a lot of women have reported to me that they'll say to their doctor, is there anything that I can do to prepare my body? Or like, when should I stop taking birth control? And typically the story is just stop taking it the moment that you are ready, because if you stop taking it too early, you're going to get pregnant immediately, and there's nothing that you can do. And then the other side of the story is the woman that says she's been having trouble getting pregnant, and is there anything I can do to support my body? And the answer is still no, there's nothing you can do. Your body is actually broken, and we need to fix it with some of these ART, assisted reproductive technology treatments, or using medications like Clomid, something to sort of like manipulate making you more fertile. So in those scenarios, it really disempowers women to be able to do anything for themselves. So one of the other things that I've added to my own training is to become a fertility awareness method educator. So the method that I teach uses basal body temperature, cervical mucus, and cervical position tracking and charting, as well as just kind of paying attention to what's happening in your body. A doctor maybe won't even ask about your period, or maybe they'll ask about like the cycle length or what your last menstrual period was like. But even if you say, I have 10 out of 10 pain, I feel like I'm going to pass out when I get my period, I have raging PMS, or like I have fibroids, cysts, I have like whatever the thing is there. And I don't, sometimes I listen to podcasts and I hear people, practitioners that are more in the holistic space, share about doctors and like, they're so dumb and everything they're doing. It's that I'm not trying to make an excuse for them, but they don't have the type of education that I have. And there's no way, the amount of time that I take with each person, there is no way that they could make a livable income without burning themselves out. So just
Yeah.
to kind of not give them permission to just function the way they do, but just to say like they serve a function. They can maybe help you get labs for free if you have insurance. They can do an
Mhm.
ultrasound, they can do a pap and see if you had an infection. So just kind of like seeing how you can use a medical doctor to get the information that you want and need. But also, one of the things my teacher says a lot is like, not going into McDonald's and expecting to get a tire rotation or something. It's like you sort of get that there are certain things that are available in certain places. So anyway, to just to say that sometimes the whole point of that, everything I just said, is that sometimes they'll jump from you are on birth control, now we need to do ART without ever giving your body an opportunity to return to a naturally fertile state before jumping into that. So I have a patient, so this is anonymous because I'm not sharing her name. But she had super short cycles. So there were like 18 days from one period to the next. I don't even know if she was ovulating at the time, but no one does because no one even asked. And so she jumped right into an ART to doing an IVF cycle. Of course, she didn't get pregnant because nothing about her body was ready for pregnancy. Her womb prepared, her hormones were not prepared. There was nothing about her that was ready for pregnancy. So I think that one of the things that happens for people is that we feel like we have complete control over everything. It's like with all of these medications, with all of these drugs, you'll get pregnant and you can even choose the gender. It's like you don't even all we have all of this handled, in terms of where this baby. And I think, talk about the spiritual element of that, of just like, who is this soul that we're calling in? Like what we are playing God. And that feels really big to me in a way that I guess I don't want to be attracting that level of energy of like, I'm playing God and I don't care. It's coming from a place of like, I'm drawing this soul in and I'm aware that maybe natural fertility is not going to be on the table for me, whether it's because of me or because of my partner, but we're calling in this soul in a more conscious way rather than just like, all right, pump me full of drugs, do what you got to do kind of thing. And a lot of times it's women that are underweight, under eating, over exercising, which I know that you and I both have a past with those aspects. And I don't think it was so related to your fertility for you. Um,
No, I had an easy time getting pregnant, but I'm
mhm,
telling you, listen to this. I thought I might be infertile, and you know why? Because I practiced fertility awareness methods successfully for 15 years before getting
mhm.
pregnant. Because
Yeah. And everyone told you that was BS and not possible.
well, yeah, and I just thought, well, seriously, like all I'm doing is following these things and following them very carefully because I was
Mhm.
absolutely afraid of having a child at the wrong time. But I thought I might be infertile, and actually the case was I was at myself and my husband were absolutely fertile. We were just following God's
Doing it correctly.
we were just yeah. Anyways, there's a little plug for fertility awareness method.
Yeah. I mean, it's so amazing. And right now, most of my work is working with women that do want to get pregnant. And I find that really rewarding because women that want to have a baby are so motivated for
Yeah.
change.
It's
And when I've worked with women that are you wanting to learn it for pregnancy prevention, I just find that they're not as highly motivated. Like when I first learned fertility awareness, it was for pregnancy prevention. And that's a whole other story. And I have my own experience with not having a period but I sort of understood over many years that under eating, over exercise, being under a lot of stress, not honoring the cyclical rhythms of my body was the root of that, was the cause of that. So that is a big part of it is so when I first start working with somebody to improve their natural fertility, I want to know about their diet. I want to know about their exercise plan, their sleep, their digestion, um, their whole system, and especially because I'm also a Chinese medicine practitioner. If I'm going to be prescribing them herbs or giving them acupuncture, I really want to understand their entire system and what
Mhm.
the dynamic is that's underlying whatever imbalances there are. And there are some women that come to me and they don't really have too many period problems, but then when we get into the weeds, with fertility awareness, they have no cervical mucus, or their temperatures are really low, or there's barely any temperature shift post ovulation, or they have a super short luteal phase. So a woman could say to me, like I have a 30-day every cycle. I have a 30-day full cycle from one period to the next. I bleed for 4 days. And then in Chinese medicine, maybe we'd be like, all right, this person's doing great. Like her cycle length is good, her bleeding phase is good, but maybe she's not ovulating. The only way that we really know that is if we're tracking mucus,
Mhm.
tracking temperature. I use a lot of LH testing in my practice too, which is a whole other can of worms. But LH is testing for luteinizing hormone, which surges 24 to 36 hours before ovulation. So many.
So luteinizing hormone is what makes the egg pop, right?
Exactly. It's kind of like if you picture the follicle being like a balloon, LH is what pokes it and pops it and releases the egg.
Wow.
So many women buy these LH strips because they're marketed as like ovulation predictor kits. And
Okay. Yeah, I've seen those. They have them like they literally have
everywhere.
them at the supermarket now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they buy them because they're like, this is for my fertility. And so many of the women I work with are like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing here, though.
Yeah. Because
No,
that's
I
almost like
mean,
you've gone into like sort of Jedi level fertility stuff, but maybe you're at more of like a Tampax level of understanding, right?
yes.
Yeah, that's kind of, yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. So I like to put as many things together as possible. And then the other nuance to this is that I don't do everything with everyone because there are some women that taking their temperature really overwhelms them. So they're going to be a person, maybe I just really make sure they're clear about the LH. We see if that can work for them. Some women are doing this super detailed charting method for cervical mucus where we record the amount of stretch, the color, the sensation when they're wiping. And there's this whole chart with all of these different letters and numbers. It's like learning a different language. Some women look at that, or I even like briefly share about it, like I just did here, and they're like, nope, not for me, not doing that. Like that sounds way too complicated. I'm just going to ish it and write down what I'm thinking. And then I just do my best to support the women that I'm working with the information that I have. And there's actually a lot that I can get from a minimal amount of information. But the more I know, the more helpful I can be in terms of herbs, supplement recommendations, diet recommendations. And that, yeah, I guess that's one of the biggest challenges in my practice is that, and I'm sure you can relate to this as a Chinese medicine practitioner, like you go to a party and you're like, I'm an acupuncturist, which now I don't even say that because it's like, oh, I get headaches. Let me tell you about like, what do you think that means? Or what points would you do? And it's just kind of like, where do I begin? Even people ask me that all the time, like, what points would you use? Or what herbs would you use? And there are, probably you're aware of this too, there are practitioners that do function like that. Like they
Mhm.
have their fertility formulas and they just kind
Mhm.
of use the same thing for everyone. And sometimes they're successful. It's like, how can I
Yeah.
explain that? I don't know. But
You
I
know what? Okay.
personally,
I actually want to expand on that a little bit because I remember like noticing that as I was developing in Chinese medicine and noticing that like I was drawn more towards the Ikeda Masakazu style of Japanese acupuncture, which is very individualized for every person. But then I
Mhm.
saw some other practitioners who would literally do the same 10 shoe points on every single patient, and they were having amazing results. And I was just like, what in the actual heck is happening? And then over like a couple of years, I was just like, you know what? I'm telling you, it's the intention.
Yeah.
It's they believe in it. Their patients
Mhm.
believe in it. They're in a heart-to-heart connection with that patient and that spiritual energy, because that's how acupuncture works. Just a moment for the listeners here. Acupuncture works because of spiritual energy flowing down through heaven, through the practitioner, through the needles, into the patient, and back through the practitioner into the ground. Like that's theoretically how it works. I don't know if
Mhm.
science would agree with that, but that's how we explain it in Chinese medicine. So if they have that, if they're doing that, it will work, even if, to you, you're practicing, you have a totally different way of doing it. It can still work.
Totally.
It's really
And I
interesting.
guess one of the things that I feel, well, I guess I'm thinking about herbal medicine because I do think that herbal medicine is a little bit different in that way, that what I have noticed in myself as a practitioner, so I've been practicing Chinese medicine for, I guess I started school almost 15 years ago. So like the things that I would have done then or that I did earlier on in my practice are significantly different from what I'm doing now. And I would say mainly that's been informed by one of my teachers, Sharon Weisenbaum. I don't know if you know her, but she has the White Pine Circle. So I do some teaching in there too for fertility awareness. But she is just like a master Chinese herbalist, and she studies classical Chinese medicine, which is really different from TCM. So it's
Mm,
what I have experienced in the last 15 years is like a complete dismantling of everything I learned in school and then like building it back up. So what I have noticed, and I'm not always successful, and my teachers aren't always successful,
yeah.
and that's really frustrating and confusing sometimes because it's like theoretically every single thing about this person makes sense that this would be the formula, and then I also change the formulas myself, so I like make them customized for each person, and I'm like, man, I'm just like totally on point here. And then they're like, it's just kind of a dud. And then other people never, maybe there's one woman I'm thinking of, she was having, after she had her second baby, she was having like crazy heavy, painful periods, gave her a formula. She took it for like 2 weeks, never had the issue again. Totally fine. She's like, thank you so much.
Yeah, I know.
So,
Chinese medicine it's it's effective, but it's not a silver bullet. Nothing,
mhm,
there's no method of healing that is. And that's, as I've been in this alternative health world, similar to you, about, I guess, 15 years,
mhm.
we there was this naive part of me when I started learning about this, and I really thought, okay, we're gonna help everyone. We're gonna fix everyone. And looking back, I'm just like, wow, that is so incredibly childish.
Well,
And
however, though, you're gonna probably be able to relate to this. So much of the translations of Chinese medicine texts are like, and there was a cure, and there was a
yeah,
miraculous cure. Like
yeah.
everything was like, everything was solved, sort of thing. So they're definitely, I think it's a normal, natural thing to think
Yeah.
this is like this miraculous medicine that's going to cure everything because it
Well,
is in our text that
and
it.
and we do have to be optimistic. I mean,
Mhm.
if we as healthcare practitioners are not optimistic and feel that every person that comes to us, hey, no matter where you're at, you can get better.
Mhm.
Maybe understanding, maybe you can't get 100% better, but you can feel better than you do today. If we
Mhm.
don't feel like that, then what are we even doing, right? We have to
Mhm.
have that optimism, and I guess we do have to have a little bit of like childlike excitement, or else how would we manage to keep slogging through this world of checking women's cervical fluids and asking about women's bowel movements?
Yes.
From our sponsor, Mother's Best Liver Pills. Do you know that your body needs the deep nourishment of organ meats, yet you haven't succeeded at cooking and enjoying them? That's what Mother's Best Liver Pills are here for. Beef liver is the most nutrient dense food in nature, with the exception of polar bear liver and shark liver, and for that reason has always been prized by traditional cultures around the world. The synergistic package of bioavailable iron, copper, retinol, vitamin D, and all the B vitamins, including folate and choline, was designed by nature to replenish the human body from what life demands of us. These nutrients are especially helpful for pregnant and nursing mothers, women planning to conceive, anyone who is recovering from stress or restrictive diets, especially veganism or vegetarianism. You can find out more at mothersbestliverpills.com and use the code MB10 for 10% off. Now, back to the pod.
Yes. Well, and one thing I'll say about that is that so I wish I had kept track of it, but probably over 10 years on without a period for most of that time, which sounds kind of nuts. And it's not that uncommon, in the hypothalamic amenorrhea space.
So you yourself did not have, you had like rare periods?
I would have 5 within that 10-year period. And
Wow.
I don't know if any of them were ovulatory because I was not tracking.
Yeah.
And I remember, so part of the reason I bring that up is because I think for a lot of women, the frustration is in the mystery of it. It's like, why me? Like, what is happening? There are some people that I can't give them a definitive answer, but a lot of the time I can.
Yeah.
It's like I can see what's happening with your mucus. I see what's going on with your diet and your exercise, or um, you're not getting the support that you need with, sometimes it is more of a Chinese medicine pattern of like it's nothing that you're doing, your diet and your exercise and all that lifestyle stuff is perfect. We
Mhm.
need to unlock this dynamic of your Shaoyang to get your pivot moving. Like there's some things that need to be addressed with treatment modalities. And then there are many things, like in my case, so much of it was with lifestyle stuff. And so a lot of times people want to skip to, which I was doing, like I'm going to go take all the herbs, I'm going to get all the acupuncture. That's part of how I do all of the things that I do, abdominal massage, yoni steaming, where it is a thing that women will do is this like seeking of like, what's the answer? And sometimes it's because they don't want to look at the most, which is better nutrition, body changing, exactly. Like not such an overachiever. Like maybe you need to rest more. Maybe you need to stop drinking caffeine to keep yourself, buzzing through your day. That's a big part for a lot of people. Yeah. So, but to go back to the reason I brought that up is because being in that mystery, I remember what it feels like to be in that, like, why don't I have a period? Like, there were times where my body kind of looked normal. I looked like just like any healthy 20 something person. And I didn't have a period for many years. Like, how can you make sense of that? And now I completely understand what was going on. And I don't need to get probably into all of the little details about what exactly was going on. Um, there was so much of the time where I was thinking to myself, like, I wish I just had an answer. At that time, I had gone into treatment for my eating disorder for 3 or 4 times. So I was kind of like, okay, I'm on a good trajectory now. And so I was able to start charting my cycle because if you don't have a cycle at all, there's nothing really to track, is what I thought at the time. And then fast forward to after my daughter was born, which me getting pregnant maybe is like a separate thing. But I did get pregnant and then I didn't have a.
Holly, can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Did you get pregnant while you still had an irregular and rare
Yes.
cycle? Okay.
Well, I was starting to get it regularly. What's so cool, and what for anybody that's listening, just to kind of another shameless plug for fertility awareness, is that I was charting my cycle very, quite diligently, not in the level of detail that I have been now for the past 3 years. Um, but at the time I was charting it, and so I know the exact day that I conceived, which was on day 40 of my cycle.
So, okay, so does that mean you had A second ovulate. What does that
No.
mean
So
exactly?
I know I blow people's mind with that all the time. And this is why fertility awareness is so cool because people, and I feel like God gave me the gift of having such a sensitive body of like there's nothing that surprises me in a chart. I can just anything I'm like I've seen it, in my own cycle. So basically what was happening is I got out of treatment. I was doing really well, and which many people with eating disorders, it's not like you're just cured and everything's
Yeah.
fine. So I
Journey.
I backpedal sometimes, and I went on a trip to Mexico, and I was kind of having a hard time finding things that felt comfortable for me. So lost a bunch of weight, maybe not a bunch, but some. And I had a boyfriend at the time who is my daughter's dad. And so I knew that my cycle was kind of crazy, that I was ovulating late is basically what happened. So that is called
Okay.
being on the hypothalamic amenorrhea spectrum. That's what my teacher calls it. And then PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, is also on a spectrum. So
Mm.
there are, the PCOS is, we could do like a million podcasts on that alone, and hypothalamic amenorrhea too. So that is basically, that mean hypothalamic amenorrhea basically just means that you are not getting your period from undereating, overexercise, and or stress, some combination of those things. It's also possible that women are ovulating later, or they have a short luteal phase, or there's other cycle irregularities that are showing up due to undereating, overexercise, and or stress. So for me in particular, undereating is kind of always at the core of what is going on for me. Probably there's other elements of it too, but anyway, that is what I went on this trip to Mexico. My cycle started getting really long again, which is because I was ovulating late. But the reason that I know when I ovulated is because I was paying attention to cervical mucus and temperature. So I'm tracking. So if you've ever seen a BBT chart, you
Mhm.
have one axis that has the temperature, and then the other axis has the day of the cycle. So I had this period, and then it's just like bopping like this. I know people can't see me probably, but it's just kind of bopping up and down. There's some aspect of your temperature tracking where it's just kind of up and down day to day. We don't read too much into that. And then ultimately, you see a temperature shift after ovulation. So you'll see this patch of cervical mucus, and then you'll have your temperature shift after ovulation. So I saw that on day 40 is where I had a patch of mucus like days, I can't remember exactly, day 35 to 40 or something like that. And then temperature shift on day 41. And then you have your high temperatures. And then at that point, you have your high temperatures, and you're kind of waiting for it to either drop or like your period's going to come if you're not pregnant. So I got to be 16 days post ovulation. I was like, oof, that's not a long luteal phase for me. So typically it will be 12 to 14 days. For other women, I've seen longer than that. I've seen significantly shorter than that. But that's why it's so amazing to be tracking which part in the cycle is where ovulation is happening, which is helps you to understand where the full cycle length is coming from. So somebody could say, I keep having these like 45-day cycles, but they can still get pregnant if they ovulate and they have cervical mucus, even if they don't have cervical mucus, honestly. If there is any cycle with ovulation, pregnancy is possible, even if it's a wackadoo cycle. But that's
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Because something I have heard a lot is that luteal phase is always 12 to 14 days. Something that's really prevalent in the fertility sphere. And so you're
Mhm.
telling me something different. And I really want to
Oh
hear
yeah.
more about that. Because
Oh
that's
yes.
like people are saying that a lot.
I think that's kind of one of the limitations of social media, or like anybody being able to write anything they feel like. So,
That's
yeah, I have personally had an 8-day luteal phase. I've seen 9, 10-day luteal phases, 11 for sure. I think that what
mm,
people are trying to get across when they're saying it's always 12 to 14 days is that there's less variability It's more
Okay.
stable
Yeah.
than the follicular phase.
So the follicular phase, which is the time of building up to the ovulation, has a lot more variability than the
Yes.
time from the egg and the uterine lining shedding. That's more
Yes.
okay.
More stable, more less exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in an individual woman, like maybe she'll tend to have this a similar length each month, which is cool if you're wanting to predict your period. I can predict when mine's going to come, not because I have an app that's predicting it for me as someone with an irregular cycle. I know because I can see what's going on with my temperature shift. And then also I do look back and look at my old charts I mean, I tend to have like a 12 to 13 day luteal phase is kind of like my sweet spot, but I've had shorter ones, I've had longer ones.
Mm,
And yeah, I mean, just looking back at my own charts and then also in my practice, there are some women that tend to have the same one month to month, and then other women that there's more variability.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And see, this is why I'm really loving having you on this podcast because there's such a big difference between people that just might be well versed in the literature as
Hmm.
to people that are actually working with humans, and you're actually working with women and seeing what's actually happening as compared to someone that might be, you know, a person who's a very interested person in this stuff, but you're just reading stuff. Not, you're not out there in the trenches.
Totally. Yeah. It's a very, very different thing. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so why don't you come back to where you were at before I interrupted you with that about you were kind of waiting for your period to come there?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I just ended up taking a pregnancy test, which now I kind of wish that I didn't because I already knew anyways, but
Yeah.
it was sort of a fun experience and whatever. But anyway, then fast forward through the whole pregnancy and birth. Then by the time she was 2.5, I still didn't get my period back. And so as somebody with having not had a period, I was concerned. And my teacher and I already had an established relationship, and she's like, "Girl, I have your number. Like, you need to be doing something about this. Like, this isn't normal." It's another thing that I think some women want to get pregnant at that time. Like maybe
Yeah.
they're wanting to space their children in a certain way and they're like, "Oh, well," and I was still nursing at the time, and
Hmm.
many of the Chinese medicine practitioners and even I went to see a midwife and I asked my midwives that I worked with for my birth as well about it, and they were all just kind of like, "You're still nursing, like don't worry about it." But then
Yeah, that's pretty long though. 2.5 years is pretty darn, like, that's a long
yeah,
time.
it is a long time. So what I learned in my fertility awareness education is once we get to 18 months after the baby is born, we get curious about like, why has this person's fertility not returned? And even that, there's probably some nuance. Like if you're feeling awesome and like there's literally nothing about your diet or your exercise or your sleep or anything that I could look at that maybe could use some support or maybe taking some liver supplements. That's actually when I started taking desiccated liver capsules was during this postpartum period at the
Um,
recommendation of my teacher. I don't even know how I found you, somehow on Instagram.
it was a soul connection.
It was, yeah. So anyway, that's basically we're wanting fertility, no, and I was not trying to get pregnant at the time, but I just wanted to have my health back. And
Can I mention something here too? Also, is that so often we just think of fertility as whether or not you want to get pregnant. And that is such a surface level understanding of fertility because fertility is our life force energy. So even if you are a woman who does not want to or plan to become pregnant now or ever, you still want to
Mhm.
be fertile because that's going to be your body at its maximum health and vibrancy and feeling good. And that's a message that I really want women to hear because especially now with some of the fertility suppressing hormone treatments that are just literally being tossed out like candy. I'm just like, no, girls, like you want to be fertile, but you can avoid pregnancy while being fertile. Like it's doable.
Well, preventing pregnancy with fertility awareness is actually easier if you have a more balanced cycle.
Yes, right? Because you know your rhythm and it's just easier. If your cycle is all over the place, because when I was doing it, my cycle was not regular
Mm,
because I was having cycles that were like 35 days, 48 days. And I think I was vegetarian at the time. I wasn't underweight, but I was bordering on it. And the
mhm,
amount of exercise and sleep deprivation were just through the roof. I was just working myself like a dog,
mhm,
honestly, treating this like gorgeous little early 20s woman as if she was like a prison camp slave.
mm,
Oh my goodness, those days, right? But I still managed.
mm. I'll say about the underweight thing, something that just feels really close to my own heart is that there were definitely times when I would go to a doctor and I mean, there were some times where it was just so obvious. Um, and they'd be like, oh, it's because you're too skinny or whatever. And then other times they would say, oh, well, your BMI is good, so it couldn't possibly be related to that. So there are many women that I have worked with
Yeah,
that maybe look normal. Maybe their doctor has said that nobody's it's not like raising any
red
flags
flags.
that they are underweight, but I just maybe looking through their nutrition log, and we all just have such a weird, like what a normal body looks like. That I think is part of it that maybe there's someone listening that's like, I'm not underweight either, but I have a wacky cycle, and it could
Yeah.
actually be from under eating.
Yeah, something that I'm really finding with a lot of the women that are in touch with me through my business these days is that they actually think they're eating enough. But then
Hmm.
when they tell me how much they're eating, I'm like, you're eating like a toddler, but
Hmm.
with binges. Okay. So
Hmm.
I just feel like this is so common for women is especially maybe the kind of women that are more interested in natural fertility, you
Hmm.
want to be healthy. You don't want to eat junk food. You might actually have some really high standards for organic, grass-fed, clean eating, local, right? Also, you really don't want to be overweight, which I absolutely do not want that for women. I want women at a healthy body size, not an uncomfortably chubby body size, okay?
Hmm.
But they may be they're thinking that they're eating healthy, but really they're eating like 12 to 1600 calories in the day. And
Hmm.
then after they put their kids to bed at night, or if they don't have kids, whatever, they're finding themselves, scrounging around in the cupboard, eating like an entire bag of chips or keeping little secret stashes of chocolate around the house. That seems to be very popular. And I know because I've done it.
Hmm.
And binging on that or ice cream and then feeling really guilty like what's wrong with me, I'm an emotional eater,
Hmm.
feeling like it's really almost like a personal failing. But I'm like, no, your body is literally saving
I'm
itself
hungry.
because
Yes.
even though you had your little tuna salad with your grated carrots and you had your
Mhm,
little roasted vegetables with your little lamb chop. And okay, those were all healthy meals, but they
mhm,
were still like 400-calorie meals.
mhm,
So no wonder at night your body's desperately trying to get up to, 2,200 calories or maybe 2,500. And so there you are with the bag of tortilla chips, mindlessly stuffing your face. And it's like, it's really hard I just don't know how to, and then I'm hearing from women, well, I don't want to eat more than I'm not hungry for breakfast. So I'm not going to force myself to eat if I'm not hungry. And I'm like, you have to retrain yourself to have morning hunger because for years you've been living on cortisol and stress hormones and either skipping breakfast or having a very small breakfast. And so
mhm,
then that puts you in a calorie deficit by 6 p.m. and you are going to wind up in your chocolate stash at 6 p.m. And it's just like honestly you can tell right now that I'm really emotional about this. Like I'm very charged about it because I really want better for women. I really want better for us. And
mhm,
I feel like we need to really relearn the fact that we can eat more healthy food. And if we if we eat healthy food during breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we are not going to wind up being the so-called emotional eater. I mean, I don't even know if I really believe in that anymore, because every single so-called emotional eater that I have known is also in a restrict and binge cycle. So how can we parse the two apart, right?
Oh my gosh, I could not agree more. Well, and if I could give one tip for women that want to get pregnant, it would be to eat breakfast, a
Yeah.
high protein breakfast.
And I'm even going to say, like, okay, so we have, like, okay, I'll give you what I had for breakfast this morning. I think this is a
Mhm.
very fertility promoting breakfast. Okay. So I made the same thing for myself and my son. So I cut a bagel in half, toasted it, butter on that, hummus, arugula, and a big honkin' hamburger patty that I made. Okay. This was so good. This was like 600, 500 calories, 30 grams of protein. I felt amazing until 1 p.m. and I did start to crash out at 1 p.m. But
Mhm. Which
you
is
know,
normal.
this would be in my mind a really great fertility promoting breakfast. But you know how long it took me to get to the point where I'm in a routine where that feels normal, you know? And if you haven't been eating breakfast, you could literally just start with a bowl of granola. You know what I mean? You have to start somewhere. So sometimes, like, I've been really encouraging women to eat a high protein breakfast. And if they're in the habit of not eating anything, I'm now backpedaling a little bit. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, could you make yourself a little yogurt bowl with some fruit and granola so that at least you're getting 300 calories? Maybe the macros aren't perfect, but you're at least getting your body used to digesting in the morning, you know? So I'd love to hear
Oh
your
my
take
gosh.
on that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And definitely that's a conversation I have with so many women of like the I'm not hungry in the morning thing, and an experience that I personally had as well, and how much better you feel if you just
Just force
eat.
yourself to eat something.
Yeah, and that,
Yeah.
so part of it is like you were saying, it's like it's impossible to make up for the calorie deficit of not skipping an entire meal, whether it's because
Yes.
of that, but also from a Chinese medicine perspective, our stomach and spleen is most, which is our digestive system, is most active in the
Yeah.
morning. So
Yeah.
to get your biggest meal with that, both Western and Eastern medicine agree. From what I remember from Ayurveda, they like for the like midday meal to be the biggest. Like it's like whatever, just
Mhm.
more that you can pile into the earlier parts of the day. I just personally noticed too, probably you've experienced this, that if you eat a gigantic dinner, you maybe like don't feel that awesome. But if
Ugh.
you eat a big
Yeah.
breakfast, like you're gonna use that. It's not about like I'm working it off, like
You're
that way.
metabolizing it.
That's where you get energy from.
Exactly.
So yeah, I guess I really align with that perspective. And I have noticed the same thing with like the being perfect all day and then just like the nighttime binge. And I feel the same way. People that are like, I'm addicted to sugar, a lot of times they're just not getting enough protein,
Yeah.
or
Or
they're
they
not
just
getting
need more
enough.
calories.
Yeah, yeah, just not getting enough overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I agree. And it's so easy for women to think they're eating enough. And then if you do an actual audit, they really are eating, 12 to 1600 calories. And I just don't know if there's any way to do that without, I don't know. It's a huge transition because we're all scared of being fat. I mean, like, literally, would that not be like the biggest curse in modern
Mhm.
society? And we all want that, you know, we don't want to be gluttonous as well,
Mhm.
right? And eating a large meal could be seen as unladylike. There's so much culturally that's like wrapped up in this. And I know. It was, the 90s, 80s, early 2000s were a absolutely horrible time for health. And I
Mhm.
think that's why there's been such a huge reaction with Weston A. Price Foundation, paleo movement, keto, carnivore, all that. And I think a lot of it actually has been kind of an overreaction because probably the healthiest way of eating is more the Chinese medicine style of eating, which we could
Mhm.
get into that. But it's like, I mean, we're just trying to course correct here. And sometimes I do hope that it's going to be better for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, because I do think I mean, on the one hand, they have to contend with like AI generated influencers
Mhm.
and crazy like face tuning and all that stuff. But on the other hand, they do have like body positivity. That didn't even exist for
Right.
us.
Well, since you brought up the carnivore thing, I saw a post, I don't know if it was from yesterday that you posted, and it was like a bunch of different brains of like how awake they are or like how much light is emitting from them. And I
Yeah.
really appreciated it because I can't remember them all, but like the vegan one, I have talked to other people that have been vegans previously. Were you a vegan or you were a
Oh
vegetarian?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
girlfriend.
yeah.
Both.
Okay. Oh, right, because your Kundalini and all that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I was too. And I could remember what it feels like when you eat like fish or something like that and feeling like your brain turning back on.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember all the ones that were on there, but I saw that carnivore was like a step in the process. But it's me, like there's so much of that out there right now that's just sort of like all you need is meat and fruit. I don't even know exactly what carnivore is, but so
Yeah.
many people having these like healing stories on carnivore. And to me, I always get a little bit of ick, like a that's not it though either. Like it's as you were saying, Chinese medicine has this really balanced view of incorporating a variety of foods, and we have different foods are supportive of different constitutional types. So there's so much nuance to uncover about that too. It's like so sometimes people will ask me like, "What do you eat in a day?" And it's sort of like it doesn't really matter because I have my constitution background of what has been working for my body or doesn't work for my body that I've been uncovering and am continuing to uncover. And it changes probably at different phases of our lives.
I just come from this background, maybe kind of similar to you, where I've been on the forefront of every whacked out health and wellness trend since
Mhm.
the late 90s. Okay. Unfortunately, unfortunately. Okay. So myself and all my friends, we were vegan, we were vegetarian. And then everyone spiraled into paleo, which I actually feel like paleo is fairly good.
Mhm.
Paleo, Weston A. Price Foundation style of eating. Then everybody took it up a notch into carnivore. Okay. I
Mhm.
did not. I was just like X-nay on the carnivore K. I'm not doing that. It's just giving me the ick. And I watched a couple of friends and family members do it and have a certain amount of positive benefits at the beginning, but
Mhm.
then spiral into some issues. And some of them course corrected and were like, okay, yeah, I realize I do need to get some potassium from food sources. So I'm going to start having vegetables and potatoes again. And I realize this isn't realistic for eating with a family or being in community. So I'm going to chill on that. And then others that doubled down and went harder on it. And then they had a more extreme crash.
Mhm.
And that's what I think as modern Westerners, we just, since we've had our natural food systems totally disrupted by the industrial food complex, whatever you want to call it, terry industrial food complex, we really don't know what a natural ancestral food way is. So we're kind of like just desperately winging it and trying all these crazy things. So
Mhm.
I think there's a lack of understanding that there may be certain diets that could be curative as a temporary measure, but this isn't for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
And to me, I could see the carnivore diet as a temporary curative diet, but then you should begin to expand and include a variety of foods again as you tolerate them. And I'm not saying anyone needs to include processed foods unless you need to out of convenience or just out of being a real human, which I think is fine. For people
Yeah.
with a very unique health condition, maybe they are going to avoid processed foods, and that's fine. But as far as permanently avoiding like all fruits, I just think that's a little crazy.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, one of the things that I think I've heard people share about is that I mean, when I was going through my own experience of like trying to find the perfect diet, there's like all of these documentaries about veganism. And I can't remember the name of it now, but there was a man who was like juicing and all this stuff, and he had a lot of benefits in his health. And so ultimately, what I was noticing is that anytime somebody cuts out processed foods, all of the like meat, it could just be vegetables, as long as you're not eating the chemically
Processed
made
foods.
processed foods, then your health will improve. And this is where the disconnect for me as a Chinese medicine practitioner, it's like carnivore, anything can't be good for everyone. We're all, and if you think about our own ancestral lineage, though, like what did your ancestors actually consume? Where are you from in the world? And is it going to be the same for every single person? And then we're also in America really combined with a lot of different things. It's just like, so I always go back to how does your body feel and how is it functioning?
Well, you know what? I want to interrupt you, and I want to. So let's say you've got a client. She's let's make her sort of our typical avatar of the type of women that come to us. Okay, so they're
Mhm.
hardworking, type A, smart, above average intelligence. They've been Dr. Google for themselves for the past 20 years, whatever.
Mhm.
And she says, "Okay, I'm not able to get pregnant. Where should I start with my nutrition?" So
Mhm.
what would you say to her?
For nutrition in particular.
Yeah.
Um, Eating breakfast is one, which we've already talked about. The 3 meals a day. Some also need snacks.
So this is something I want to bring up here is that there's the difference between fight or flight and rest and digest, right?
Mhm.
So fight or flight is a lot of us find ourselves in that state chronically almost all day long. And
Mhm.
and rest and digest is where we actually want to be, right? So that would be we would want to be in the parasympathetic, but we're in the sympathetic. Now that doesn't necessarily mean you're laying around like a log, but it actually means you're calm, you're functioning, and the energy that your body has is coming from glucose, which is the
Mhm.
fuel that your liver makes from the blood that's nutrient nutrified, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. This is a Chinese medicine way of looking at it, but it is the same in Western medicine. So you're
Mhm.
energized from your food and it's a calm, like, I don't know, we all know that feeling where you're sort of bopping around and you're groovy, you're calm, but you're productive, you're doing things. But then there's that other where you're adrenalized and you're in your head, you're buzzing. Maybe you notice you're not even breathing deeply. Any little thing gives you like a little start, and that's the energy that you get from adrenaline. But
Mhm.
a lot of us, that's almost the only energy we've ever really known. So that feels
Mhm.
normal to us. And when we are in that state, you will not feel hungry
Mhm.
because they're two opposite states that cannot exist at the same time. So you will not feel hunger. It is actually, I think, the biggest factor of why women have lost the morning hunger signal. But also, another factor is pregnancy is a rest and digest function, right?
Mhm.
It's not a fight or flight function. So
Mhm.
getting your body back down into that, as you said, eating 3 meals a day, eating some snacks,
Mhm.
that can help just get your body more into that groovy, things are okay, I'm busy, but I'm also chill, that kind of, yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, it's such a different feeling in your body to be energized and calm. I also appreciate that you're talking about calories because sometimes people shy away from that. What happened to 2,000 calorie being an average daily intake? And some people need significantly more than that, and maybe other people would need a little bit less. But I posted about this in a forum of other acupuncturists that there was a woman I was working with, and I was doing a case study about her, and I said I had encouraged her to get a minimum of 2,000 calories a day. And the other practitioner said, like, oh, that seems like a lot. Is there a reason that you're, and I was just kind of like, at first I felt enraged. And then I was sort of like, that's interesting. And also, I just was appreciating the gift that I've been given, that I know that that's crazy, that that
Hmm.
practitioner thinks that. And the reason I know is from my lived experience of what I've seen in my own body and what I've experienced with other women's bodies, that, like I was saying before, that they look normal, maybe their meals look normal to other people around them,
Oh
but
yeah.
their body's telling a different story.
Oh man, I just think this whole idea of kind of like that, humans need to live lightly on the planet and
Mhm.
to leave no trace and use the minimal amount of resources that you can use. And I think those ideas have some value because, of course, we don't want to be engaged in like wasteful consumer mindset. But
Mhm.
yet we exist and we deserve to exist and we deserve to receive nourishment. Like God put us here to live and give and take with this planet. This planet can feed us.
Mhm.
It's not, and there I just feel like this whole idea of has it's become so entrenched in our mindset. And even since that book, Diet for a Small Planet, came out in the late 70s, probably some people are familiar with that ethos and just the idea, the whole environmental movement and how woven into the media that's become. I think there really has become this idea that, the smallest amount that we can eat and survive, that's good. Whereas what I've come to learn is actually the largest amount of food that we can eat and still maintain a healthy weight. Honestly, I think that's ideal because then we're
Mhm.
getting the most micronutrients.
You have more energy to help
Yeah,
the people around you. I know, like,
exactly.
the people, when they're so focused on what they're eating or their exercise plan or all this stuff, it just makes you so, um,
Myopic.
yeah, you're just so only, yeah, really focused on yourself, really selfish.
Yeah.
I hope that doesn't feel like mean that I'm saying that, but
Oh no, girl. I mean, everyone who's listening to this podcast, we've all been there. Come on,
yeah.
we're never going to share, we're never judging our listeners. It's like, what it feels like to be so obsessed with your body, your health journey, your goals that you could care less about your neighbor across the street. You're ignoring texts from your best friend because you're focused on getting to the gym, you know?
Mhm.
And not to
Or
say,
you're like not going to things because of it's gonna not fit your food
yeah,
plan, or yeah.
right? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I mean, that one really hits home. And that's something I love about Chinese medicine is that truly the ethos of Chinese medicine is to be a community member, right? To be
Mhm.
a person who's like overflowing with love and energy that they can help the other people around them. And that's something that we need to bring more into Western culture because we don't necessarily, in Western culture, we really have, at least in this generation, we just kind of think of ourselves and our own personal achievements and what's my bank account look like, what does my house look like, whatever. But in Chinese culture, I mean, for all its warts and all, they really do see themselves more as part of a family, part of a community, and I think it is a much healthier mindset.
Oh yeah, the individualistic. I just think about so many ideas that I grew up with, of just kind of like being better than everyone, trying to achieve more. And man, what a different story I'm trying to share with my daughter about that, of just the importance of helping everybody to feel included and being kind to others, helping the person that you see got kicked down.
Yeah.
It's just, and I'm trying to share a different message with the women that I work with too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're helping women get pregnant and get the babies they want. Okay. So this is God's work here.
Yeah. Well,
So
one thing I wanted to share about the male thing, really,
yeah, okay, that's
really
exactly
quickly.
what I wanted to come into. Let's
Well,
land
I
on guys.
I guess I do feel like there is more of a conversation. Well, okay, I'll say the first thing is that earlier on in my practice, I didn't even, like, sometimes I would casually mention, like, I can give acupuncture to your husband too, and I could maybe help him. And a lot of times it was like, oh, he's scared of needles. He doesn't want to come in. He's like, whatever. And then later on, I started being like, well, there really needs to be a semen analysis done. Like, we need to just get a picture of like what's going on. And so now in my practice, I'm quite adamant about that needs to happen.
Yeah.
And if it's not happening, I bring it up every single time. Obviously, I'm going to continue to support the woman's body, but if she's coming to me every time thinking this is going to help me get pregnant, I want her to know, or I guess I want to be the person that has done everything that is in my power to do for her. And part of that is getting a clear picture of what's going on with the male side of things. So
Yeah.
sometimes that never happens, and there's always a variety of reasons why that never happens. Most of the time, because I am so adamant about it, it does. And so I recommend an at-home semen analysis. I send it to them, I give them a discount code. Then sometimes, it comes back and it's wonderful. Most of the time it comes back and there are some issues. I am not a male fertility expert, but I do have some things that I can recommend for them. A lot of times I am talking through the woman and then she's reporting it to him. But I also have a few podcasts that I share with them, things that I've recorded with other people, other men sharing about it. I think women like to hear women's information from other women, and men like to hear information about their fertility, probably man, like maybe it feels.
And I just think that's so amazing. And I totally agree with you. Like, guys don't want to have a woman telling them they've got a problem with their dick. You're putting this on the table. You're saying, okay, let's get this checked out. Now you
Mhm,
can look into some further stuff. And also for the guys, basically what they need is almost the same thing as what we need. They
mhm,
also need breakfast,
mhm.
also need lunch and dinner and maybe some snacks. They also need better sleep. A lot of men are not eating breakfast. And this is also putting my panties in a twist because what men turn to after dinner is alcohol.
Mhm.
Women turn to the chips and the chocolate and the ice cream. Men turn to one beer, two beers, three beers, four beers. And I really think a lot of it is just for the calories,
Mm.
right? Because each beer is what, like 160 calories? So if he's missed out on breakfast, if he has four beers after dinner, now he's got his calories in.
I've never thought about that because so much of the in the fertility space is like men can just get away with it. It's like you could
They can
impregnate
do
somebody when
whatever.
you're in your 60s and drinking and smoking, and sometimes that's true and that's frustrating, but yeah.
Yeah, I think people can, imbibe um alcohol recreationally to a certain extent, and depending on the person, I think it can be very lifestyle appropriate. But I've really come to see there's a connection between calorie deprivation in men and alcohol consumption. And I think that's for whatever reason, I'm sure, women can go into the wine mom culture and all that, and that may be related to calorie deprivation too.
Oh yeah, I think
So
so. Especially like the sugar, like
yeah.
that they just need, that's their spleen. Like,
Yeah, well, what a juicy conversation. Holly, I think you've given me and our listeners a lot to think about and a lot to incorporate because honestly, for anyone that's really having fertility challenges, I would 1000% encourage them to reach out to a Chinese medicine fertility practitioner, such as you personally or someone else. But also, there's a lot of things that we can do just by supporting our overall health because however healthy your body is, that's, your fertility is, yeah. So, wow. Thank
yeah,
you so
your
much.
fertility unfolds from taking good care of your body. There is a also such an opportunity to be so much more deeply connected with the people in your life, with the experiences that you have when you are not numbed out on birth control. And I just feel so sad for the women that maybe never thought to go off of it because they're like, I don't really want to have a baby. But it's, you were saying, so much bigger than conception.
It is.
It's being a fertile woman, being a dynamic, cyclical
Embodied.
woman that's able to respond to her natural rhythms is just so freaking cool.
I know, I know. I actually, there's a very cool woman that I follow online who is went off birth control recently.
Hmm.
And she didn't share about this with her audience at all. It was a private, just part of her life. And anyways, after she'd been off it for maybe like 6 months or something, she got a bunch of people approaching her being like, "You're using filters on your pictures now. Like, what happened? You're catfishing." And she's like,
Hmm.
I'm not using filters. I will never use filters because she doesn't agree with the whole beauty standard thing.
Hmm.
And she's like, I guess I have to tell you guys now, I went off birth control and now I'm alive again and I look better. And
Hmm.
she was kind of on that whole journey. And I was like, that is so interesting. And I can't help but wonder with our plummeting testosterone rates in men, how has being around like a whole generation of young ladies that are suppressing their natural pheromones, how has
Hmm.
that affected the testosterone levels of the young men? I'm
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I
like,
never
okay,
even thought
I
about that.
guess you're getting like raw sex, but you're not getting raw sex with a fully fertile woman. Like,
I mean, yeah, I know different people have different experiences with libido, but for so many women, they're like, it works for
dang,
pregnancy prevention because I don't even want to have sex anyways.
yeah, I know that
So
that was my experience,
yeah,
and that
it's unpleasant. It dries you out. You don't have, it's just, yeah.
yeah, it's a lot on the and that said, I know that there are women that are in a life stage or whatever where truly unplanned pregnancy is a possibility and possibly consent is not something that they have
Yeah. Yeah.
because of some really unsafe and sad circumstances. And in those situations, I completely understand making the choice for some sort of birth control that keeps you safe
Absolutely.
from
Yeah.
unplanned pregnancy with an unsafe person. Because, like, let's be real, like, life is not always us just making these great choices, like it's
Yes.
more
Let's all track our
complicated.
cycle and take our time. It's like it's just
Yeah,
not accessible for
no,
everyone.
it's not. And so I really hope if any of our listeners realizes, you're in a tough place, in a chaotic place, and maybe you want to get off your birth control, but this isn't the right time. Like, we see you and we honor that 1,000%. So
Mhm.
please understand everyone's life circumstances are really unique and
Yes.
here
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. Such a good point. Yeah, for sure.
Ladies, thanks so much for being there for this conversation with Holly. I hope you got something from this. And just remember, ladies, it might be snack time right now. It might be dinner time. It might be lunchtime. Keep that kitchen flowing. Keep those snacks going if you need those. Get outside, get some fresh air, touch grass. It's a big responsibility being a life giver, especially with the way our society is right now, where whether or not you are a mom, our natural state as women is as life givers, and that's not highly encouraged and incentivized right now. Give yourself credit for just being here. Sometimes life isn't always about like doing the next great thing. Just be present and just sit with it. And if you know someone that needs to listen to this podcast, share it with them. And as always, send me a message through my website, mothersbestliverpills.com. Don't forget to use the coupon code MB10 for 10% off your first order of liver pills. If you're curious, it's really the most Chinese medicine nutritional supplement out there. I mean, at its heart, it's a food, just in a convenient format. Mother's Best Liver Pills. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you in the next episode. Mwah!